It's the battle for the bull. Iowa, Wisconsin, a Big 10 showdown with teams that aren't exactly sure about themselves. We'll break it down today on this crossover edition. It's Locked On Hawkeyes and Locked On Badgers. Welcome in. I'm Trent Condon. That's Ryan Harings. Thanks for being with us and making Locked On Hawkeyes or Locked On Badgers your first listen every day. Glad to have you aboard with us here today as we break down the Hawks and the Badgers. Today's episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward, Mazda, Move and Be Moved. Ryan, good to see you again. Here we go. Another edition. And boy, this one feels a whole lot different than what we're used to in the Wisconsin-Iowa matchups. I'm hearkening back to me as a youngster and making my way, see family in Madison, go to the ball game, watch Iowa dominate under Norton. I don't think we've hit that point yet, but I can certainly feel the frustrations over there in Badgerland. How you doing?
Well, first of all, great to talk to you as always. We're okay. we're all right. You know, it is. I'll say this game in particular, specifically for the Badgers. I don't know if Hawkeye fans know this or not. Badger fans, I think, for the most part, do. This was the game they highlighted for the entire offseason. This Wisconsin team has been doing 42 push-ups after every workout during the offseason. If people want to know where 42 comes from, if you forget, it was that 42-10 loss to Iowa last year. This is a big, big game for the Badgers to turn this season, hopefully around, salvage it a little bit. And Iowa coming to town, it's homecoming. It's a night game. There's a lot of former players coming in. This is a huge game for Luke Fickell in this program. I don't know if they're going to be able to pull it out, but it is a massive, massive game for the Wisconsin Badgers.
So as we're on both sides here, we'll each give a little bit of an overview of our squads. I'll start on the Iowa side of things, and it's been a disappointing start, 3-2 record at this point. The expectations were that this team, maybe at minimum, would be 4-1, even 5-0 at this point. They let the Indiana game slip away. Look, it's a completed screen pass away from beating Indiana on a chip shot field goal, and we're having a completely different conversation. The Iowa State game in week 2, same kind of thing. Plenty of opportunities, couldn't make plays late, gave up another 54-yard field goal for the second straight year, and they lose this one on the road to Iowa State. You know, there's parts of it that feel like Iowa's close, but as Bill Parcells said, you are what your record says you are, and this is a 3-2 football team. So this is, I think, going to be a really big measuring block. You look at the Iowa schedule and what's still to come, still have Penn State, still have Oregon, rivalry games against Minnesota and Nebraska still to come. There's still a lot of meat on there. Oh, a road trip to USC on top of it. They got a tough slate in front of them. I'm going to guess, much like Wisconsin, Iowa probably looks at this one. This is a winnable game. This is maybe as close to a must win as you're going to have on October 11th for both of these teams.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. I had somebody, I was talking to some Michigan guys before the Wisconsin-Michigan game, and you could tell Wisconsin has kind of gotten to the point where other Big Ten, and it hurts me to say this as a Badger fan, other Big Ten schools and programs and teams and fan bases look at Wisconsin as a game that they can get now. And that's a relatively new development. You look at this Badgers team, and you mentioned the Iowa slate coming up. Wisconsin, after this game, they're going to have Ohio State. Then they're going to go to Oregon, and then they still got to play Indiana and Illinois and Minnesota and Washington. They need this. Like this, they needed the Maryland game, quite frankly, which they lost at home. They needed that game, and you and I talked about that before the season, some of the games you got to get. This is a massive game for Wisconsin, and if they don't get this one, there's a path here where Wisconsin finishes 2-10 this season, maybe 3-9. This is a massive, massive game. And, you know, you look at Iowa coming in some ways it sets up okay for the Badgers. The Badgers have a pretty good rush defense. I think they'll be able to hang in there. But Iowa special teams is always pretty solid. Once again this year, Wisconsin is not. I'm curious, and I know we're going to talk about with the quarterback situation. What is the latest with Iowa?
It's a whole lot of unknown at this point. And with Mark Gronowski, he exited the game in the fourth quarter against Indiana, was not able to come back in. At the time, Kirk Ferentz mentioned that he wasn't able to decelerate. That was the terminology that he used. Speculation is something to do with the ACL that he tore his freshman year at South Dakota State. Same knee. Certainly, we do know that part of it and what the actual injury is, what's a strain. I took away from Tuesday and Kirk's press conference this. I think Kirk Ferentz was very surprised how he practiced, what he did. So they do morning practices at Iowa. And I think he was surprised what he saw that morning with him being able to move around, do some different things. I think it went from last week, no shot he's going to play against Wisconsin, to suddenly at the beginning of the week, hey, there is a chance. And now it's trending towards, I expect that we will see Mark Gronowski out there. Now, we'll see him out there. Here's the second part of it, though. What's he going to look like? Because Mark Gronowski's greatest strength as a quarterback is as a runner. He has 7 rushing touchdowns this year. His ability on those 3rd and 1s to get the first down seemingly every single time. The physicality that he brings to the running game. Those are the elements, and when things aren't there, able to tuck it and get those first downs. If you're talking about a guy that is limited because of a knee injury and not able to do those things, Mark Gronowski is a pocket passer only. I don't know if I'd rather have Hank Brown or even Jeremy Hecklinski out there, the Auburn and Wake Forest transfers respectively, as opposed to him. If Mark Gronowski can't run, I don't know how effective he can be.
It's a really good point. It's something I mentioned on another show I was doing, because Wisconsin earlier this year, Billy Edwards was hurt. And they tried to rush him back for Maryland. He wasn't fully healthy. And part of Billy Edwards, not as much as Mark Gronkowski, but part of Billy Edwards, is his mobility too, right? So if you take that element away and you try to rush them back, I don't know if it makes a ton of sense, because you could ding him up again and then you could lose him for the rest of the year potentially. But it's such a big part of what he does. And this is a pretty good Wisconsin front seven that it'll put a little pressure on him. It'll put a little pressure on the Iowa running game, the Iowa offensive line. I don't know if it makes sense to rush him back either. And the Badgers did that this year with Billy Edwards, and they're paying the price now because he got dinged up again, because he couldn't use his mobility. And now they've lost him for several more weeks. Big picture wise, it might make sense to hold off a little bit. So it is going to be interesting to see.
Take us over to the Wisconsin side. You mentioned Billy Edwards and the presumed starter coming in. They went in the portal and got out Billy Edwards. I still can't get over that from the offseason. But that aside, that's who they went with. Now tell us about the new guys, including the Southern Illinois transfer we saw a week ago.
Yeah, for the 3rd year in a row, Wisconsin has lost their starting quarterback. Billy Edwards, as you mentioned, was the guy coming in from Maryland. The backup was Danny O'Neill. He came in and he played pretty well against Middle Tennessee State. Not a good team, though. Middle Tennessee State, certainly up to the level of Iowa by any stretch. He played pretty well. And then Alabama happened. He got beat up. Offensive line has been very good this year. So Hunter Simmons came in, and he's really kind of taken the job a little bit. For Iowa fans, you're going to see a quarterback in Hunter Simmons. The archetype is a pocket passer. He is not mobile. He's going to need the offensive line to keep him upright. But he's a little bigger. He's a little bigger than Danny O'Neill. He's 6'2", 6'3". He has a pretty good arm. He can spin it. He can hit more of those out routes, more of those deep throws that Danny O'Neill could. So, think of maybe a Joel Stave type Wisconsin quarterback for Iowa fans that might remember him. He's that type of player. I think he's okay, right? He's a competent, okay quarterback. He has experience. He's a senior. He hasn't played a ton at this level, obviously, but he actually looked pretty competent in Michigan, first road start in Ann Arbor with an offense that's kind of functionally broke around him. Like, Wisconsin can't run the ball at all. Wisconsin's offensive line is a sieve this year. So he's been okay. And if you're an Iowa fan, I think you're going to see Wisconsin try to get him, get rid of the ball early, get rid of the ball quickly, maybe throw a little bit on a first down, because the Badgers have struggled running the ball this year. The rest of the Badgers team, it's a good front seven. They've done really, really well against the rush this year, but the pass defense has not been good. The corners have struggled. The safeties have struggled. A big injury at safety, Preston Zachman, one of our leaders, he's not going to play. Offensive line has been a massive issue for Wisconsin this year. You had a couple injuries. They've shuffled people around, multiple starting rotations. We're not sure if our starting center is going to be out this week. I think he will be out again. It's been a big, big problem. They haven't been able to run the ball because of that, and they haven't been able to keep quarterbacks upright because of that. So that's kind of Wisconsin in a nutshell. The offensive line's not been good enough, and the special teams have been poor this year as well. Another spot where Iowa, coming into this game, is going to have a pretty big advantage.
Well, we are going to talk more about this game. Want to talk about offensive line. It's Iowa, Wisconsin. We got to talk about the big boys up front. Iowa's has graded out very well, yet doesn't exactly marry with what I've seen this season. Wisconsin, they have struggles up front, which is just unfathomable when you think about this matchup. We'll talk about that, and plus the future of the programs. We got some hoops talk coming up as well as we continue. It's a crossover edition of Locked On Hawkeyes and Locked On Badgers. It's almost the weekend. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order, these players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. Well, I'm going to help out with the Badgers here since Iowa was off last week. Let's go with Dylan Jones. He scored the touchdown on that opener, got into the end zone, 65 yards rushing against that talented Michigan front. Dylan Jones, he certainly delivered for the Badgers. When the pressure was on, he came through with no hesitation and no delay. And just like he delivered for the Badgers, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday you order, stack it up all season, and you could save $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day. Only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period good through November 18th. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. Well, the NFL season is here. FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using the FanDuel app. One of my favorite features late on Saturday night, you'll start to see the point spread start to pop up for the following week's games. Feels like you can get a jump on things. You can do that on the FanDuel app. Plus a wide market of futures. How about going through and putting together a same game parlay, taking a little bet, maybe turn it into something big. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. That's FanDuel.com. Trent and Ryan back with you once again here on a crossover edition. Locked On Hawkeyes and Locked On Badgers. Thanks for making Locked On your first listen every day. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Listen on the podcast side. 5-star reviews. All that helps us get in front of more Hawkeye or Badger fans. All right, Ryan. Offensive line. What is going on? What is going on up front with this team and what they did? Now, I mentioned during the DoorDash streaks there, they looked pretty good up front in that first drive of the game against Michigan, but after it was all downhill from there. It's unthinkable that Wisconsin's not good up front.
It's unthinkable and it's inexcusable, right? I think both those things are true. That if this doesn't ultimately work out for Luke Fickell, and certainly it's trending a certain way, you almost look back at offense line and quarterback as the two things that failed them, that they could never figure out. So heading into this year, they had a left tackle they were really high on. He got hurt, and there was no pivot. They had no backup tackle they could turn to. They went to the portal to find a guy, Davis Heinzen. They tried him at left tackle. After one game, they pulled the plug on that. They said, nope, this doesn't work. Let's flip the right tackle to left tackle. Let's move a guard to right tackle. Let's put a new center in. That center didn't work, so let's try a new center, and let's move that old center to right guard, and that didn't work. So it's been just a disaster. And I don't know in the middle of the season how that really gets better, right? You can get better through continuity, some of these younger players that they've shifted around, but this is not going to be a good line at any point this year. Can it get a little better? For sure. If their starting center, Jake Renfro, gets back, could he make a difference? Absolutely, because he's a veteran player. But this is going to be an issue all year. And you couple that with the fact that you have young running backs who aren't at the caliber of some of the previous Wisconsin backs, at least yet, and injury issues at quarterback. This offense is just stuck in mud. And you know this. Iowa fans know ball. They know this. If the offense line doesn't work, you can't scheme past that. There's no X's and O's to scheme around that. So it's been really bad. It's as bad as people say. For Hawkeye fans who have maybe heard Wisconsin Badger fans talk about it, it is that bad. It has been that terrible. There were glimpses against Michigan. You're right. But I almost wonder if that first drive was Michigan not taking Wisconsin and this program very seriously, to be quite frank.
Yeah. On the Iowa side, no one has an offensive line factor yet. As we go through and really the last 15 years until last season, when they put it together with Caleb Johnson, there was a lot of disappointment. I mean, I go back to, 6 years ago now, they had the best center in the country in Linderbaum, who you see dominating with the Baltimore Ravens. You have Alaric Jackson, who's been a multi-year starter now with the Rams, including taking them to the Super Bowl. The best right tackle and now the best left tackle in the game in Treston Wirfs. They have those three guys on an offensive line, yet they stunk because their guard play was terrible. And they've had these individual pieces, but they haven't been able to put it together until last year. Now you look at the numbers, and Pro Football Focus has every one of these starters graded out at an incredibly high level, and they're paying well. But at the level that they kind of paint it, I don't see it. Now, I wonder, is it more Iowa had a special running back last year in Caleb Johnson? I think we know that, but they don't have that special guy this year. The Iowa running game just has not been able to get unearthed. And when you look at those grades, you think that they'd be better running the football. It hasn't been the case. Now, the second part of that is Iowa's been really banged up, and all of their running backs that have anticipated going to see extended playing time. All of them have been banged up this year. So we'll see. Kamari Moulton, the presumed starter coming into the year, he averaged 6 yards a carry a year ago in a backup role to Caleb. He got hurt in the first game. He's been back, played a lot more than I think anybody anticipated against Indiana. If he's 100%, maybe things will look different at running back. But Xavier Williams, he's been out the last couple of weeks, a redshirt freshman who was outstanding early after that Moulton injury. He's back out there. They're not going to have Jazzian Patterson this week, who's kind of your just dependable, solid, running back that's been around and stuck around the program the last 3 years. So there's faces there. It's just been such an odd year because you would think, you look at those numbers up front, they don't exactly marry with what Iowa's done this season in terms of running the football and even at times with pass protection. So if you, Badger fans, if you're just looking to say, oh, this Iowa offensive line must be great, I certainly haven't seen great. Good? Yes. I don't think they're at that great category.
Let me ask you this. The Badger, I don't think Iowa's going to be able to run successfully on Wisconsin consistently throughout the game. I think the same is true for Wisconsin, by the way, not being able to run on Iowa. Is Iowa in a spot, whether it with the quarterback injuries and you mentioned some of the pass protection issues, can they throw the ball enough to win this game? Can they say we're going to throw the ball first down, second down? Because the Badgers' pass defense has not been very good. The Badgers' pass rush has been okay, but the secondary has been targeted. Is Iowa going to do that? Or are they going to just say, no, we're going to rely on special teams defense? Is it going to be a 14-13 traditional Big Ten West team, our Big Ten West game? Like, what is the offensive game plan for Iowa going to look like?
I think putting in the caveat, Gronowski healthy, right? If Mark Gronowski he's not going to be 100%. I think we know that, but at least throwing the football, what you can do, able to move around the pocket, do those things. Yeah, I think you've seen enough. And you go back to last week or 2 weeks ago now against Indiana, there was a stretch where he hit 13 out of 14. I mean, he was tremendous for a long stretch in that game before the injury. So I think they can. The wide receiver, Sam Phillips, a speedster that they brought in from Chattanooga. He's a little guy, but he's got wheels. He's been getting involved in. Maybe even a bigger component to that is Reese Vanderzee is going to come back this week. And he is their most dynamic wide receiver. He got injured walking up the stairs right before the season began, which was absolutely crazy as he had something bust up in the leg. But he's going to be back. I don't think he's going to play a ton, but can you look for 20, 25 snaps, something like that? He's a big-time red zone target. With their injury at tight end, they really don't have that kind of guy. The rest of the receivers are not real big outside of Dayton Howard. So I think getting that big, potentially red zone target is going to help, and a guy that can go up and make that play at 6'5". So the return of Reese Vanderzee coupled with what we've seen the last 3 games with Gronowski throwing the football, I think they can. It's not their best path, but I think it's also going to be a path too. They're not going to chuck it 45 times. We know that. You guys know that. That's not going to be part of the game plan. But if Gronowski needs to go out there and go 21 to 29, throw for 210 yards, something like that, I think that is plausible with the way that they're built.
Well, I think this Badger secondary, like I said, can be had. So that might be what you see for Iowa to maybe open up the running game a little bit. Mm-hmm. Conversely, Wisconsin I think they're going to have to try to throw the ball. I don't think they're going to be able to run on Iowa. Iowa's rush defense, I think, is right now is number 1 in the Big Ten in yards per game, yards per carry against. It's really stout, as it always is against Iowa. So I would look for Vinny Anthony. If you're an Iowa fan, Vinny Anthony, Lance Mason. Vinny Anthony is the best player on the team, probably. If not for Mason Reiger on the defensive line, it's Vinny Anthony, who he housed the kickoff return against Alabama. He toasted an Alabama cornerback on another play where we just couldn't get him the ball. He's really good. Had 9 catches last week against Michigan. Look for him to try to get involved. And then Lance Mason is a pretty good multi-dimensional tight end that they brought in from the portal this year. I think in a more functional offense, he would be a bigger name. He'd have better stats, but he's a really good player. They're going to have to throw. They're going to have to throw against Iowa because they cannot run the ball this season. How well that works, it'll depend on pass protection a little bit, which everyone talked about has been iffy at Wisconsin. Yeah. But I think both teams may need to throw a little bit to open up the run. And the team that's successfully able to do that might have the edge here.
So before we flip the script here, I want to talk a little basketball, as I know you're in Chicago and going through media days. Big picture with the program, because we've all heard that. Any Big Ten fan, any fan of this rivalry certainly has heard what's happening. Wisconsin, Fickell, the buyout, those kind of things. If you can, just fill us into the latest kind of what you're hearing. And if this thing does crater, look like it has a chance really to do. I was giving you a hard time on our Locked On the Squad show before the season about them going 1-8 in the Big Ten, and maybe I overshot that one. However, if it does really fall apart here, is Wisconsin in a spot that a buyout's going to happen? And what does the future look like if that plays out in that fashion?
Yeah, that's a great question. And you're not wrong. You may have overshot the 1-8. if this thing goes off the rails, there's a real chance, and when I say goes off the rails, Wisconsin could win 2 or 3 games this year with the schedule and what's coming up and how they've looked so far. I continue to hear a lot of reticence from people when it comes to Wisconsin's going to pay the buyout. I'm just not sure. It's a roughly $25 million buyout. I don't think that's going to happen. Even with it like a 3-9 season, unless this really goes off the rail where Iowa's 42-10 again, and then you get smashed by Minnesota. Like, those could always change the narrative. But I think if they're close, Wisconsin is just going to be hard pressed to pay the buyout. Because what people need to realize, you pay the buyout, but then you have to hire a new coach, and then you have to have money for new assistants, and then you have to give that coach NIL money. Like, big picture, and fans don't want to hear this for a program that isn't Texas A&M, that isn't going to spend at that level. It might make sense to take the poison pill, another year Fickell, drop that buyout, see if you can improve against an easier schedule, and if not, then you move on and you have more money in the coffer for the next guy. Fans do not like to hear that. I'm just relaying kind of what I'm thinking is going to happen. The money's a real factor in Madison.
On the Iowa side, say Iowa loses this game, and mention, though not as difficult as Wisconsin, a very difficult schedule for Iowa, say misses a bowl game. The Heat's going to turn up in a big time way. As successful as Iowa's been, certainly over the last 5 or 6 years, it's still the struggles against the top level opponents. They go from seemingly pulling a big upset every single year. That's fallen by the wayside. And a lot of times they've been blown out in those games. And, if that starts to creep in a little bit more, you miss a bowl game. We're talking about a 70-year-old coach. Not that Kirk Ferentz is going to be fired. No, that's not going to happen. Iowa could go winless the rest of the year. They're not going to fire Kirk Ferentz. However, the Heat's going to be ratcheted up, and that's going to certainly change here. So kind of intriguing game because of that on both sides too, kind of when we look big picture at the future of the programs as we get ready for the night kickoff at Camp Randall. We're going to make our predictions for this game. Plus, we're going to talk some basketball. Iowa with a new coach on the basketball scene, and Wisconsin, more of the same with Greg Gard, a top half finish. How high can the Badgers finish? We'll talk about that as we continue on this crossover edition of Locked On Hawkeyes and Locked On Badgers. This episode is brought to you by Mazda's Moving the Game Forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. This week's moment that moved the game forward is, well, I mentioned it earlier, about Jones getting the end zone early, and all of a sudden it looked like this Wisconsin team is alive. We don't need to talk about what happened the rest of the way, but gave themselves a good moment, and Wisconsin a good one. Iowa off this week. How about the game that moved the game forward? Getting healthy, and maybe a surprise Mark Gronowski coming back for the Hawkeyes this week. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. Back with you one final time here on this crossover edition of Locked On Hawkeyes and Locked On Badgers. Thanks for being with us today. And a big thank you to you everydayers with us every single day. We are your daily source of a podcast on both the Hawkeye and the Badger side of things. Ryan, wrapping things up. Media Day. Did you get to hang out with the Hawkeyes? I mean, you had to be seeing stars, getting to see Ben McCollum and company, right?
I did not spend a lot of time with the Hawkeyes. I did not. Although I'll tell you, and I have a good friend who's on a Division I coaching staff. And when Ben McCollum got hired, the first thing he said, and he's this my good friend. He coaches but he's a Wisconsin fan. He grew up here. And he said, that's a problem for the rest of the Big Ten.
Mm-hmm.
I know him. I like, that's a problem. He's going to do really, really well. So I did not run into any Iowa guys. I was pretty focused on what we were doing there for the Badgers, but I think that's just a tremendous, tremendous hire for the Hawkeyes.
I've stated it this way. Iowa now has a coach that can turn into what Wisconsin's been the last 30 years. And, in a way, Wisconsin's kind of taken what was Iowa's when I was growing up in the 80s and the 90s, right? What Iowa basketball was, kind of Wisconsin's morphed into, that team that can make a tournament. And they took it a step further, playing for a national championship and doing those things. And Iowa's fell by the wayside in 87 when they had that opportunity. But that all aside, now it's time to take back what's ours. All right. You guys go back down to the middle of the pack and just fighting to be a tournament team. We're going to take that step forward to be that. I love the hire. I love Ben McCollum, and living in Des Moines, seeing what he did just in 1 year at Drake was absolutely incredible. Nobody had any expectations what he did there. I think he's the perfect fit. He is the guy that kind of gets this program and can get them back to that level that they were. The frustrations of Fran, fun to watch, get up and down the floor. Well, offensively fun to watch, not watching them try to play defense. This is going to be the right how about Wisconsin? The expectations with Bennett Sturts coming in preseason, all Big Ten, preseason All American. I think a minimum year number one Iowa tournament team. How about you guys at Wisconsin?
They're pretty high. Expectations are pretty high, and you return John Blackwell, who is an all Big Ten-ish type player. Kind of tested the NBA draft waters last year. You return Nolan Winter, who's I think is as talented as a big man Wisconsin's had maybe since John Lure. He's really, really good. And then they went out and they grabbed a really interesting player, Nick Boyd, San Diego State point guard, a guy who's been to the Final Four, a veteran player. And you look back at last year's Wisconsin team, and they just didn't really have a point guard. John Tonje was great, and they're going to have to replace that shooting. But I think Boyd's going to be a great fit. There's pretty high expectations for this Badgers team. I think they're going to be deep. They're going to shoot really well. Offensively, they're going to be one of the best teams in the conference. The question is going to be, how do they defend? And that was an issue they had last year. Losing Stephen Krell in the middle is going to hurt the rebounding. It's going to hurt the post defense. But it's a pretty exciting team. And when you talk to people in the program, around the program, players, coaches, they think they're in for a run. And I'll tell you this, Badger fans need it. We need some happiness and joy right now.
Come on, knock it off over there. We haven't been to a Sweet 16 since I was in college, 1999. Knock it off.
That's fair. Why don't we both go? We'll both go to a Sweet 16.
Now we're talking. I'll sign up for that right now. Absolutely. That's what we need to happen. It has been a long, long time. And I am certainly not going to cry for you Badger fans as it comes to what's happened on the hardwood. All right, let's wrap things up with football and wrap it up with our prediction coming up for the games under the lights at Camp Randall. Now, student section always late arriving. Night kickoff, do you expect that? I wonder this. If it's a slow start, a lot of them say, the hell with it. I'm just going to the bar. I'm just standing on the tailgate lot. What do you expect to see? And just crowd overall. There's going to be a lot of people there. It's going to be a good environment. It's a night game at Camp Randall, but both if things go poorly early on and just the students kind of where they are as we sit at this point in the year.
It's a great question. The night game helps. It is homecoming, so you have some more people in town because of that. There'll be just some more natural excitement because of that. It'll be a good crowd. I would watch if this thing gets ugly for whatever reason. Again, the Maryland game got ugly. The booze were out quick. Like the chants and the booze were out quick. So if you're an Iowa fan coming up to Madison, have a great time. Have an incredible time. Hope you leave sad, but have a great time while you're here. Buy some varsity ale. That helps our NIL. But yeah, if it gets ugly, you're going to see some booze. You're going to see the frustration because this has been an ugly 2.5 years for Luke Fickell. I think the crowd will be pretty solid, though. And again, it's because of the night game. It's because of homecoming. So it'll be a solid crowd.
A lot of Schlitz throughout the course of the day.
Be a lot of things throughout the course of the day.
All right. I got this for this one. I think it is going to be your traditional Big Ten West game. I think it's going to be ugly at times. There's going to be all the jokes on social media from all the national people when they flip over and see this game and how ugly it is. Maybe there'll be a safety involved. I got Iowa on a walk-off. Drew Stevens has struggled this year. They're all Big Ten kicker from a year ago. He's got a big leg, though. He hasn't missed from 50 yards. He hits a 52-yarder to win it, 19-17 on his fourth field goal of the game. Iowa gets it done on a walk-off to beat the Badgers, and I'm sure the Boo Birds will be out after that one because he'll let the crowd know.
Well, listen, I'll be there in the stands, so it would break my heart if that happened. I think on my other show, I had Iowa winning like a 14-13 game. I'm not sure how either team, especially Wisconsin, gets to 17 points in your prediction. I don't know what the path for that is, to be honest. I think it has to be ugly. If you look at the FanDuel over-under, I think it's set at 35 and a half is what I saw. I think it's under. I think it's under that, actually, which is insane to me, but I think it's under. You said classic Big Ten West. I think it's Iowa like 14-10, 14-13. And I just go back to the fact when I look at these two teams, I don't think either team's going to score a lot, but Iowa has the edge on special teams. Wisconsin has shot themselves in the foot a lot this year. Close game, special teams flips it. You mentioned a walk-off kick. I could see a big return for Iowa, a block kick for Wisconsin. I hate it. I would love to be wrong at the end of this. I do think Iowa's just a little more well-oiled, unfortunately, and they come out with a tight win.
There it is. Prediction time and our thoughts on the game brought to you by FanDuel. He's Ryan Harings. Make sure you check him out. Locked On Badgers. I'm Trent Condon. Locked On Hawkeyes. Thanks for being with us and making Locked On Hawkeyes or Locked On Badgers your first listen every day. We also have our squad shows and Locked On Big Ten with Craig over there doing a great job. If you're a Big Ten fan, want a deeper look at every conference game, Craig's got you covered over there. We will be back with you with our reaction shows and a full slate of shows coming up next week. Basketball season starting to heat up as we are going here on both fronts. Thanks for being with us, Ryan. Good talking with you.
Always great, Trent. Appreciate the time. And again, for any Iowa fans coming up, I hope you have a hell of a time, and it's a good weekend for everybody.
We'll talk to everybody next time. Until then, I say go Hawks.
On Wisconsin. Let's go.